The year is 2011. A skinny 19-year-old from a Brazilian favela nutmegs 3 defenders, flicks the ball over a fourth, and volleys it into the net, all in under 4 seconds. The crowd loses its mind. The commentator loses his voice, and the world loses a footballer it will never see again. Neymar Jr. No other name in football splits a room quite like his. Half the room will tell you he's a generational genius, the most naturally gifted dribbler since Ronaldinho. The other half will tell you he was soft, a diver, a wasted talent who chose parties over greatness. Both sides have a point, and that's exactly what makes him one of the most fascinating, infuriating, and irreplaceable footballers to ever lace up a boot. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. At his peak, Neymar Jr. was arguably better than both Messi and Ronaldo. Keep that thought, because by the end of this video, you'll either agree with me completely, or you'll be typing your disagreement in the comments. Either way, let's get into it. Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. was born on February 5th, 1992 in Mogi das Cruzes, a working-class city in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. His father, Neymar Sr., was a former footballer whose career was cut short by injury. And from the moment little Neymar could walk, a ball was placed at his feet. But this wasn't a comfortable upbringing. The family struggled financially for most of Neymar's childhood, moving between small homes, sometimes with barely enough money to eat. Football wasn't just something Neymar loved, it was the family's only way out. That pressure would shape everything about how he played. By the age of 7, Neymar was playing futsal, the small-sided indoor version of football played on hard courts, in the streets of Santos. And futsal is where the magic happened. Unlike the open pitches of Europe, futsal forces players into tight spaces at high speed, with no room to hide and no time to think. It's where Brazilian greats like Ronaldo and Ronaldinho learned their craft. And for Neymar, it was a laboratory for the dribbling genius that would later make the world stop breathing. By the time he was 11, Neymar's father had arranged a trial at Real Madrid. Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world, and they wanted him. But Neymar's father turned it down, deciding his son needed more time to develop in Brazil, close to home. It was a decision that would define Neymar's entire career trajectory. Instead, at 14, Neymar joined the youth academy of Santos FC, the same club that had produced a certain Pelé decades earlier, and within a year, Santos knew they had something extraordinary on their hands. He made his professional debut on March 7th, 2009, aged just 17 years and 30 days. In his second game, he scored his first professional goal. By the end of his debut season, he had 7 goals in 14 appearances. For a 17-year-old, in senior professional football. But the scouts who travelled to Brazil to watch him weren't writing reports about his goals. They were writing about something you can't coach, can't teach, and can't manufacture. They were writing about his dribbling. To understand what made Neymar special, you have to understand what great dribbling actually is. Most wingers beat defenders with pace. They run past them. Some beat defenders with strength. They muscle through them. A rare few beat defenders with technique. They wrong foot them. Neymar did all 3 simultaneously, and then he added something nobody else had. Pure theatrical joy. Watching Neymar dribble was not just watching a footballer beat an opponent, it was watching a street artist perform. He had moves with names. The flip-flap inherited from Ronaldinho, the rainbow flick, the elastico. And he deployed them not just when necessary, but when entertaining. He played football the way Brazilian street players play, with a smirk, with flair, with total disrespect for the defender in front of him. In the 2010 and 2011 seasons at Santos, Neymar entered a different stratosphere. He won the Campeonato Paulista, São Paulo's state championship, twice, and was named the best player both times. He scored 42 goals in 2011 alone, not across 2 or 3 seasons, in a single calendar year, at 19 years old. But it was in the Copa Libertadores, South Americans' version of the Champions League, where Neymar truly announced himself to the world. Santos went all the way to the final in 2011. and Neymar was absolutely devastating throughout. 8 goals in the tournament, assists that defied explanation, individual moments that forced veteran football journalists to reach for words they don't normally use. In the final against Peñarol, Santos won 3-0 and Neymar was named the best player in South America, the youngest player ever to win that award at that point. At this stage, every major club in Europe was circling. Chelsea, Real Madrid, Barcelona, all of them wanted Neymar. And rather than chase the money, Neymar stayed at Santos for 1 more year. He wanted to be the best player at the FIFA Club World Cup, representing Brazil. He achieved that too. He finished his time at Santos with 136 goals in 225 games. But statistics alone don't tell the story. The other half was the 54,000 fans who packed the stadium just to watch him play. The YouTube compilations racking up tens of millions of views. And the moment that lives beyond all the statistics. In 2011, Neymar scored a goal against Flamengo that the Brazilian Football Confederation submitted as a candidate for the FIFA Puskás Award. He collected the ball on the right, beat 5 defenders in a corridor of space the width of a door frame, including a 360-degree spin that made the last defender simply disappear, and then slotted the ball calmly into the bottom corner. It was the kind of goal that makes football philosophers question whether the sport can be art. He didn't win the Puskás that year. He was robbed. In the summer of 2013, after years of speculation, Neymar finally made his move to Europe. Barcelona signed him for a reported fee of 57 million euros, although it later emerged the actual figure was closer to 86 million, a detail that would later explode into one of the biggest financial scandals in Spanish football history. But that comes later. What matters first is what happened on the pitch. At Barcelona, Neymar joined Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez to form the attacking trio known as MSN, widely considered the greatest attacking partnership ever assembled in football history. Between them across the 2014-15 season alone, Messi, Suarez and Neymar scored 122 goals. 122 goals in a single season. But here's what often gets forgotten in the shadow of Messi and Suarez. Neymar was not a passenger in that trio. He was the third dimension. While Messi was the genius and Suarez was the predator, Neymar was the chaos agent, the one who stretched defenses beyond their breaking point, who created space simply by being on the pitch, who could turn a blocked move into a backheeled assist without breaking stride. In his first full season, Neymar scored 39 goals and provided 19 assists. He followed that with 45 goals and 25 assists in the MSN season. Those are not numbers for a support act. These are numbers for a superstar. And in May 2015, MSN delivered the ultimate prize, the UEFA Champions League. In the final against Juventus in Berlin, Barcelona won 3-1, and fittingly, it was Neymar who sealed the victory with the third goal in the final minutes, controlling the ball, cutting inside, and finishing with precision to complete one of the greatest trebles, La Liga, Copa del Rey, and Champions League in the history of the sport. He was 23 years old. At that moment, the question wasn't whether Neymar could match Messi or Ronaldo. The question was whether he would eventually surpass them. And then came the moment that changed everything. Not a transfer, not a controversy, a knee. July 4th, 2014. The Estadio Castelao in Fortaleza, Brazil. Neymar has just carried his nation through a World Cup on home soil like no Brazilian player since Ronaldo in 2002. 4 goals, 3 assists. An entire country of 200 million people riding on the shoulders of a 22-year-old. With Brazil leading Colombia in the quarterfinal and seconds left on the clock, Colombian defender Juan Zuniga rises for a loose ball and drives his knee directly into the base of Neymar's spine. It is not a tackle. It is a collision that fractures Neymar's third lumbar vertebra. The stadium goes quiet in a way that football stadiums almost never go quiet. Neymar is stretchered off, and as he's carried past his teammates, the camera catches his face. Not angry, not stoic, but completely broken. Tears streaming, mouth open. A 22-year-old realizing that the moment he has trained his entire life for has just been taken from him in a split second. The image travels around the world within minutes. 4 days later, without him, Brazil lose 7-1 to Germany, the most humiliating defeat in their entire footballing history. Neymar watches from a hospital bed, a neck brace around his spine, unable to move. And here's the brutal truth. Brazil's 7-1 was not just a football result. It was the moment the world saw what Neymar meant to his country. Not as a player, as a shield. Without him, one of the greatest footballing nations on earth fell apart in 45 minutes. He came back, as he always did, but he would spend the rest of his career chasing a moment he never quite caught again. And the question that had followed him quietly since that stretcher, was he tough enough for the very biggest stage? Was about to get a lot louder. In the summer of 2017, Neymar did something that stunned the entire football world. He left Barcelona, not for Real Madrid, not for Manchester City, for Paris Saint-Germain, a club that had never won the Champions League and was owned by Qatari money looking to announce itself to the world. The fee? 222 million euros. 222 million euros. Shattering the world transfer record by almost double. It remains the highest transfer fee ever paid in the history of football. The stated reason was simple. Neymar wanted to step out of Messi's shadow and win the Ballon d'Or. He wanted to be the best player in the world in his own right, not the third piece of someone else's puzzle. And remember that claim I made at the start? That at his peak, Neymar was arguably better than both Messi and Ronaldo. Paris was supposed to be where he proved it. This was his stage, his moment, the one he had engineered a world record transfer to create. No Messi beside him, no shadow to stand in, just Neymar, the ball, and the biggest club competition on earth. And for about 100 days, it looked like genius. He was unstoppable in Ligue 1. He scored and assisted at will. He looked liberated. He looked like the best player on the planet. And then, in February 2018, playing against Marseille, Neymar broke his foot. He would miss the rest of the season, including PSG's Champions League exit. He came back the following season, and in February 2019, he broke his foot again. Same foot, different game. PSG's Champions League hopes evaporated again. By this point, a word was following Neymar everywhere. A word that would define the debate around his legacy more than any statistic. Injury. And alongside it came a second word. One he'd earned and one he hadn't. And the problem was nobody bothered to separate the two. Let's talk about the diving, because it deserves a proper conversation, not a dismissal. Yet Neymar went to ground too easily. Yes, there were moments, particularly at the 2018 World Cup, where he rolled and clutched and writhed in a way that embarrassed him, embarrassed Brazil, and handed his critics everything they needed. The clips went viral, the parody accounts multiplied. A Brazilian senator publicly called him a disgrace. Even his own teammates were reportedly furious. But here is something the highlight reels of Neymar rolling around never show you. Neymar was, statistically, one of the most fouled players in the history of professional football. At Barcelona alone, he was fouled an average of 4.9 times per game, more than any other player in La Liga across multiple seasons. Defenders who couldn't stop him simply stopped him illegally. Studs, elbows, late challenges designed not to win the ball, but to send a message. So did Neymar exaggerate contact? Absolutely. Genuinely and embarrassingly, yes. But did he spend 15 years as a moving target for some of the most cynical defending the game has ever seen? Also yes. The truth, as it usually does, lives in the uncomfortable middle. A player with a legitimate grievance who let that grievance turn into a habit that undermined everything else he was. The diving didn't make him less gifted. It made him less trusted. And in football, once you lose the crowd's trust, they stop seeing your brilliance and start waiting for your next fall. That cost Neymar something no statistic can measure. The universal, uncomplicated love that the very greatest players earn. Messi has it, Ronaldo has it mostly. Neymar never quite got there, and a significant part of that was his own doing. Let me paint you a picture of what Neymar's last years at PSG actually looked like. It is February 2021. PSG are playing in the Champions League round of 16 against Barcelona, Neymar's former club, his former home, the club that made him a superstar. He has been waiting for this match for 2 years. He has spoken about it in interviews. He wants this. For 80 minutes, Neymar is the best player on the pitch. He creates, he dribbles, he draws fouls. He is everything you remembered him being. And then, with PSG leading and cruising, Neymar goes down with an ankle injury that will keep him out for the next 2 months. He doesn't see the second leg. He doesn't see PSG knocked out. He watches on crutches for the 4th time in 4 years, as his Champions League dream dissolves without him. That is the story of late career Neymar. Not laziness, not parties, not a lack of desire. A body that simply could not hold the weight of his ambition. Between 2017 and 2023 at PSG, Neymar missed 133 competitive games through injury. To put that in context, that is more than 3 full seasons of football gone. In the 6 years he spent at the club, he was fit enough to play regularly in only 2 of them. He ruptured ligaments, he fractured bones, he tore muscles. His body, it seemed, was writing checks his talent could no longer cash. And in the moments between injuries, and this is what the criticism always missed, the talent never left. Never. You would see a flash in a Ligue 1 game that made you grab your phone. A nutmeg so casual it looked accidental. A free kick that bent the laws of physics. A dribble through 3 defenders that made a stadium full of people exhale at the same moment. The gift was always there. The body just kept betraying him. PSG sold him to Al Hilal in 2023 for 90 million euros. From the club that paid a world record 222 million euros for him to a league most football fans couldn't name a team from in just 6 years. And at Al Hilal, the cruelest chapter of all, Neymar ruptured his ACL in his very first competitive appearance. He played 5 minutes of competitive football in his first year at the club. 5 minutes. Al Hilal eventually terminated his contract. And here is where I need you to stop and sit with something for a moment. Because the easiest narrative is that Neymar wasted his talent, that he chose the wrong path, that he let down a generation. And maybe there is some truth in that. But consider this. Neymar played his first professional game at 17. His spine was fractured at 22. His foot broke twice before he was 27. His knee gave out at 31. He spent the best years of his career not choosing between parties and football, but between surgery and rehabilitation. Over and over again. In a body that kept breaking despite everything he threw at it. That is not the story of a wasted talent. That is the story of a talent that was too big for the body that carried it. So how do we judge Neymar Jr.? If you look purely at the statistics, 135 goals for Barcelona, a Champions League winners medal, 2 Olympic gold medals for Brazil. Brazil's all-time leading scorer with 79 international goals. The case for greatness is overwhelming. If you look at the individual moments, the Puskás-nominated goal against Flamengo, the bicycle kick against Villarreal, the solo dribble through half the Barcelona defense, the free kicks that bent time. The case becomes undeniable. But if you then look at the Ballon d'Or shelf where his name is absent, and the World Cup winners medal he never earned, and the PSG years that promised the world and delivered heartbreak, you understand why the debate will never die. And here is where I bring you back to that claim from the very beginning. Was Neymar better than Messi and Ronaldo at his peak? Here is my honest answer. In terms of pure, raw, natural ability, the ability to beat a man, to create from nothing, to do something with a football that nobody else on earth could do? Yes, there were moments, specifically between 2011 and 2015, where Neymar was doing things that even Messi and Ronaldo were not doing. The difference is that Messi and Ronaldo had something Neymar did not. An unbreakable body to go with an unbreakable will. And in football, longevity is the final argument. It always wins. Neymar was not a flawed version of Messi or Ronaldo. He was a completely different type of player to both of them. Messi is precision. Ronaldo is power. Neymar was electricity. Unpredictable, unstable, dazzling, and impossible to contain or control. And like electricity, you couldn't hold it. You could only watch what lit up while it lasted. His tragedy is not that he failed. His tragedy is that we got perhaps 40% of what could have been. And that 40% was still enough to leave Jaws on the floor for 15 years. Imagine the other 60%. Brazil has produced Pelé. It has produced Ronaldo. It has produced Ronaldinho. And yet, even in that company, Neymar Jr. occupies a space entirely his own. Because no other footballer in history has ever combined that level of technical brilliance with that level of controversy, that level of genius with that level of fragility, that level of joy with that level of heartbreak. The kids growing up today will try to copy his flip-flap. They'll study his free kicks. They'll practice his dribbles in the street. And some of them will get close, but none of them will be him. Because Neymar Jr. wasn't just a footballer. He was a feeling, and you don't replace a feeling. There will never be another Neymar Jr.